Hello everyone, Ceri the Crafter here, that's C-E-R-I, the Crafter. So, as you may or may not know, it's April now, and in March I ran a challenge called #MixedMediaMarch25. Loved it. If you're not familiar with it, I will put a link to the playlist in the description box below. It was a wonderfully inspirational month with lots of artists being involved. But anyway, I ended up with some spare things or spare resources at the end of that challenge. And I thought I wanted to do something with them other than just putting them into my supplies and they may get damaged. So I ended up with a spare pad of mixed media paper. So that's probably what you want to know if you're going to ask me. I also ended up with a whole pile of arty papers I made on book page and some copier paper, so I had that as a resource to use as well. And I just thought, you know what, there's something here. So this is the basis of my idea. Now, I was in my local charity shop the other day and I found this. It is an absolutely tome of a book. Massive amount of stuff in it. I mean, I'm going to be fussy cutting for years at this rate, taking all of the significant elements out of this that I might use. Now, I found this for 99 pence, which was ridiculous. This shop was just selling all the books they could because they had so many donated to them. So I thought, you know, this gives me an opportunity to play with an idea. Now, I do know certain artist designers out there like Dina Wakeley, Diana Reevely. I thought I'm going to create myself an art journal. So I'm going to do either 4 or 5 signatures in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spare bits of paper and then I'm going to randomly put some squares and rectangles or edging on each of the pages as a sort of starting point. So in future, I just open my art journal up and then use the piece that's on the partially decorated page as inspiration. Now, the first thing I need to do is I need to remove the book block. The book block is, as far as I know, this piece. Now, there are several ways of doing this. I will do it the way I feel best suits the book I'm working on. In the past, you may have seen that I will get something like a seam ripper, a new seam ripper, and the bit with the bead, I will slot the bit with the bead in between the gap of the board and the book block and slide it along. This one, however, this is quite tightly glued in, so I'd be stuck really to try and get that in there without ruining it. So I'm going to resort to doing it with a very sharp knife. Now, you've got to be careful. First of all, we're dealing with a blade. Secondly, I don't really want to slice through this part of the spine. If I do, I can repair it, but it's easier not to do it in the first place. Now, trying to do this and have you watch at the same time is going to be a little tricky, so bear with me. So there is a gap there, which you may just be able to see, where this front cover page has been glued to the front cover. And I want to come down, and I'm very, very gently cutting down that join. Now, my aim is to release it from the cover without cutting the cover itself. I'm sort of angling my blade so that it points in this direction, so that I'm more likely, I don't mind cutting the book block. The book block is going to be taken to pieces anyway. I just rather not do any damage to this piece. Oh, right there, that was a relief. Right, so it doesn't matter if it's got a bit of an overhang, we can deal with that. Now, once you've taken the front one off, the back one, as you can see, is going to be easier because you can see where this seam is, or join is. So I'm just going to run my knife down there. Now, it depends on the quality of the book and the size of the book and how big the book block is as to how tricky that is. Now, let's put the cover to one side a second. Let's take this, put this back on here, because I could slice my fingers open. No, we don't want that. Now, before we even start deconstructing this book, there are a couple of things I'm going to do to rescue. This inside sheet is normally, as you can see, attached to the piece that is holding the whole spine in place. And I like to take that off. I would if I could get it. This one's really well glued. Normally with older books, they're not as well glued. Let's turn this over. Now, you may or may not have this on the book you have. Okay, so what I've done is I've now taken this piece off. This will now go into my fussy cutting box, and I will systematically, over the next 10 years, only joking, over the next few months, I will just take it piece by piece and go through this and take things like words out of it, music out of it, maybe black and white images that I could use other places, text, any words that are relevant, anything like that, and work through. And I know there's a section in here that actually has coloured images, which are quite large, but there's stuff within these I could take out. So let's put this to one side because that's no longer part of this video. Now, what I have left here are the inside and outside back papers. Now, I'm just going to come in and tear those off from the spine piece. Now, these will just get trimmed down with my guillotine, and they will just go into my patterned paper drawer. I will keep them to one side as a reference because these dimensions here are the dimensions of this here. So when I want to cut a new inside cover for this, I will use those dimensions, or as close to as I can. Let's put those to one side. Now, we do have this piece. Now, there are a couple of things you can do with these, depending on how degraded or how good it is. I could use this to reinforce the entire spine, because we're going to reinforce in a minute anyway. I could use that to stick back into there. Actually, how thick is this? This is quite thick. So I'm just judging. This is a bit of cardboard I bought out, and this, I think I might actually stick that back in. But on the inside, absolute against there. So what I'm trying to do is, this is only one thin layer of card with the leatherette or the book fabric over the outside. To be able to sew into this, I need this to be more robust. Normally, I would cut a thin piece of card, glue it in place down there, and then that would make it double the thickness, so I've got something robust to sew into. But looking at this, I'm really liking this. I'm thinking sew through this, but I do want to do a bit of trimming up. I need to trim up a few things, actually. All right, come in and see if I can just tidy off some of these pieces, being really, really careful not to slice through the spine or the fold of the spine where we've just been cutting down. So see, try not to cut that edge there. It's going to get covered up anyway, but I'd rather I didn't do it. And if it sticks a little bit out, I'm okay with that as well. Come on, come off. One little stubborn bit there. Just put that to one side. So this is now, in my regards, ready to go. I will talk more about this in a second. Now, to prepare this to go into my book, I want to trim off these edges here. So I'm just going to come in with a metal ruler, and I can see where the edges of things are. I'm just going to trim. Am I in shot? I am, as much as I need to be. Just going to trim this edge down a bit. And I'm going to do the same here, just to trim that down a bit, because this is what everything will get sewn into. Now, I am going to sew through the spine of the book. I am not creating a hidden spine. A hidden spine is a completely other technique. just so we clear this out of the way. A completely other technique. So if I was doing a hidden spine, what I would do is I would stitch all of my signatures to this and then glue this to the inside of that spine. Let's just take that little bit off there because it doesn't look as if it's not glued down properly. So let's bring this back in. All right, so this now we know fits in there. And it fits in there quite nicely because I'm also going to reinforce this as well. So this is an old book. I want to make sure it's as reinforced as it can possibly be. I think I want to take the top and bottom off that as well. I just realized because I'm going to be doing a wraparound with some wet strand tissue gel prints that I've done, and I did them in a separate video, and yes, there is a video of me doing them, and I will talk about those when we get to there as well. Right, there you go. That fits nicely in there. Now before we get to stick this in, let's talk about this. Now I have already taken some isopropyl alcohol or rubbing alcohol and just given this a good old wipe over, just to make sure there's any grime or anything on there has been taken off. Also, when I created my tissue papers, I created them and put white paint on so nothing would be seen through. However, just as an extra precaution, I may use this way up so I've got a completely flat front cover. It doesn't matter really, but that's just the way I think we're going to do it. Also, because it's got this sort of leatherette on it, I am going to come in and I'm going to use a sanding block and I'm just going to give it a bit of rub over. Now, I'm not going to do this on screen because I want to do this outside in my garden. I'm asthmatic. I don't want any dust or anything going into my lungs. I don't know how old this book is. I don't know where it's been kept. I'm just going to come in and just gently do that to the top of it. I'm not going to sand really hard because I don't want to go through this one layer of leatherette here. So that's what I'm going to do. So when you see this next, I will already have done that. It won't be visible, but it will have been done. And after I've done it, I will also give it a wipe with the damp cloth so that I've got all of the extra bits of dust off it. So let's go back to this side. So my first thing to do is I want to put this back in place. Now, it depends on which way it's already bending as to which way I feel it sits down best. And to be honest with you, I quite like it that way on. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to put this in with Fabri-Tac. Now you can put it in with whichever glue that you think is your favorite strong glue, but know that this is being done to reinforce the spine and also to give yourself somewhere for everything to be stitched through. Now the temptation also is to make this out of really thick cardboard. I would advise that as I'm sewing the signatures into this, don't forget I've got to be able to puncture this with a bookmaking awl, that's AWL, to be able to make holes to put my thread and needle through. So there are those things to be considered. I'm just going to put it into the middle, give it a good press down. Making sure it's as even and well spaced as I possibly can. Let's just put the lid back on this again. I'm just going to put a bit of a weight on that. So now, if you don't have anything that fits this, what a trick I like to do is get a ruler that's as wide as your spine, and then put a heavy weight on the ruler, and that will consistently press this through. So give me a second, I'm going to set this aside. So, where's our book gone? Here it is. Now, I know the dimensions of my pages because I have these. There will always be some trimming involved. Now, this is mixed media paper and it's too big, which is fine. I can always cut stuff down. Also, if I look at it this way, I know that if I just fold this in half, I'm going to have enough room to make my pieces. Let's take this off. So I'm thinking of doing 4 or 5 signatures of 2 pages, 2 sheets per signature. So let me just pause you while I get all these torn out. So now I've got all my sheets torn out. I'm going to start doing some trimming. So I'm going to prepare 1 signature for you with you watching, and then I'm going to prepare the rest. So I'm going to come in, and because I know that I've only got barely enough width, I'm going to just take off this tiniest little bit off the end of each page. As I said, I'm only going to do the 2 pages currently. I'm not going to do all of them. Let's put those to one side. Now, because I never know whether my guillotine cuts true, I match the edges at the top. So if I can match the edge all the way along the top, I'm okay. So I'm going to put this in all the way over. There is another, if you have a scoreboard, there is another way of doing this, and I don't mean by scoring it. I'll just show you that one. That's an interesting way to do it. Where's my scoreboard gone? So if you have a scoreboard, and I'm not saying score this, I'm saying you've got a scoreboard. Remember, this is a 90 degree. So if you take your piece of paper and you push it up against that corner and then push this up, come to the middle and run your fingers from the middle outwards, you will find that you've got this perfectly folded. Let's just do that one more time for you. So if I push that up against the 90 degree and up against the top, fold this over again and do the, again, sliding it up so everything is up against the top. Come down to the middle and slide your thumbs out. And then when you've put that to one side, you can come in and just use your bone folder to get that really good flattened down. Now I am only putting 2 pages, I believe, per signature, which may not seem a lot to you. I mean, when you reckon that that's all the signature will be, I want to have enough space for these to be opened up and worked on, and then I know it's going to be bulked out. As I said, I'm not sure whether I'm doing 4 or 5 signatures, but I think that's going to be enough, because I could just decorate on one side or I could decorate on both sides. Now, I know this is the height of my page, so I know I need to trim that off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my guillotine back in, and I'm going to find out exactly what the height of this is. I would say that's, if I call it 10 3/4, that's as near as darn it. Okay, 10 inches and 3/4. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to separate these out again. Keeping it folded, I'm going to put it back in 10 3/4, which is there, making sure everything's held in place, and slice. Now this should now be the same size as that, and it is. And I'm going to come in again. I'm keeping the folded spine towards me, 10 3/4, making sure everything's held in place. So this is now my first signature. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to prep all of these, and then we'll take a quick look and see how that glue is doing. So I've got them all done up. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 5 signatures. I did think, should I do 6? I thought, no, let's just do a bit of a check first. Now, obviously the cover is still probably a bit tacky, so I don't want to play around with that too much. We'll come to it in a moment though. But what I do have is I have the original book block. So I'm just going to stand that on its end. And if I now put these in here and let them relax open a bit, as you can see, I think that's more than enough room for that, because I've got 5 of these and each has got pages and like you. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 pages in each, so 5 times 4 is 20. I think that's ample, guys, because I don't know what I'm building on these, and also I don't want it to get really alligator mouthed. Now, I could have doubled these up and put an extra one in the middle or something, but then I'm always battling the curvature of the spine. So that's our signatures ready to go when I'm ready to sew them in. Now, I know this isn't fully glued yet. I mean, it's been in place for probably about 15 minutes, which isn't really enough time, but it's okay for what I'm thinking. Now, I am going to be covering the entire thing in this wet strand tissue. And I wanted to show you this so it explains why I'm doing things in the order I'm doing. I'm putting the extra support in the spine, and I'm going to be putting a piece of fabric down the center as well, just to add extra support in the spine to anchor these to here. Now, the reason I want to do all of this first is because if you look, when I wrap the tissue over the top, then the tissue will cover all of the ends of everything, and I won't be battling with having ends showing, so the top and the bottom will have the tissue wrapped over the top. Just wanted to show you that, just so you understood why. Let's take this out of here again. Now, this is just, I want to say it's something like a bag for life or something like that. It was part of something that came with that. Now, I want to just come in and I want to make sure that it goes all the way across. Now, this is slightly annoying because for some reason this one edge is rolling up, and that's going to do me in, should we say. So I know some people are going to go, Ceri, you could snip and tear it. Yeah, you could, but I'm not going to. I want to cut this, because the moment I start snipping and tearing, then I end up with distortions, and I'm trying to realign things. I just want this one edge off. The other edge is curling a little bit, but that for some reason isn't bothering me today. But this one edge is, it's almost, this must have been a fold in the fabric or something. I need to clean my scissors. There's obviously glue on those. So I'm looking to come over here. Now, this is going to be stuck onto here, into these ridges here, which are the hinges, and onto the edge of the book's covers. And I want to do that so that when I put a cover piece on here, this is hidden, but it's adding extra strength, because if I'm going to be working in this, it's going to be open and closed a lot. Now, I need it to be the same height as these, not the cover, because remember, I'm folding over. So this, I'm just going to see if I can do a little tear and snip here. It doesn't bother me that bit. So that's not bad. I can live with that. So it'll probably fray shorter as I'm working on anyway. Now, little things like this, if you've got little bits left over, you can always stamp them with permanent inks and use them for elements in clusters or in your toppers as well. So never throw things like that out. So the next thing I want to do is I want to get this stuck in place. Now, I know that I don't have a wide amount of fabric across the sides, so I'm pretty much going to fold this in half, just so I know roughly that I've got it sorted out. And then I'm going to come in with my Fabri-Tac again, and I'm going to use Fabri-Tac, and I'm going to give a reasonable coating of Fabri-Tac down the middle, across. I'm going to put it up the spine or the fold, and back and forth across here. Now, one thing you're going to find if you're using a thinner fabric is that anytime you do this, the Fabri-Tac's going to come through. So I just use my finger. I mean, if you've got ladies with nail polish, maybe put a glove on or do something different, because it's going to take your nail polish off. And I'm just going to open this out, get it reasonably in place, and then just press it down with my thumb, and then I'm going to work it down into that gap there. So I'm only working part of it at a time. because if you've got a whole load of stickiness on the go, it's just going to cause you problems, guys. So just once you've got one side down, fold it the other way, give it a bit of a pull. Now, don't forget that there's going to be stitching, 5 rows of stitching going all the way through this. So it's going to be held in place by the stitching as well. So even though I am being a bit overly useful with the Fabri-Tac, just know that that's probably my anxiety having more to do with the amount of glue I'm using than actual necessity. And again, come in from the other side and just make sure it's all pressed down into all of the places it needs to be. Now, I am not worried if I've got any glue showing through there. And the reason I'm not worried is that's where all of my spines are going to be sewn in anyway. So just keep on working it down. You will find less glue will come through if you've smeared it out. Right, now that I've got all that in place, I could leave it for a little while to fully glue before I stick this piece on, but to be honest with you, I'm making a video. I don't have time to do that today. I need to get on with this. Let's put a line of that back up and down. And again, I'm going to rub it with my finger, although I do know that this isn't going to be seen because I'm going to put new cover pages on this, or end pages, whatever you wish to call them. These sheets, basically. I'm going to put something on that's more in keeping with the book itself. Now, while everything's still wet or sticky, make sure you're pushing stuff down. Do not pull this way because you'll pull it back out of the groove. So I tend to use my fingers, to be honest with you. If you've got stuff on your fingers, this Fabri-Tac will just pull straight off. You just need to rub it a bit and then it gets a bit goopy and you pull it off. So just making sure I've got it all down in there. If you need be, fold it over just to make sure that you've got it into that crease. And then coming, we'll do the other side. Now, unfortunately, this is where I'm going to have to stop for the day. It's only going to be 2 seconds for you, but it's certainly where I'm going to have to stop for today because I want this to fully dry before I start manipulating it further. Now, all we've got left to do basically is I need to complete the cover before I can sew stuff in. And by completing the cover, I'm going to have to use glue to put the inside and the outside on. So it's going to be a bit of a stop-start process if you're making this in real time. For me, I would probably take about 2 days to make this journal. In fact, I'm going to take 2 days to make this journal, just to make sure all of the different stages are completely and utterly dry. And the thing is, if you try and mess around with it too soon, you could weaken it. And why put all this effort in if you're just going to weaken it? So that's as much as I'm going to do. I will see you in the morning. So here we are. It's the next day for me and we're all done. It's only 2 seconds for you. Now, this is all nice and dry, quite stable. I'm quite happy with this. Now, what I want to do now, as I said, I was going to turn this into the back. So I'm going to turn this over and I'm literally going to move this over and get myself a marker or a pen or something and just write front on here. It's never going to be seen, but it does mean that I'll know which way up it is because I put an arrow, and the word front will just help me discern what it is. Now, next thing I need to do, as I said, I've given this a bit of a rub down with the sanding block, and I wiped it over again with isopropyl alcohol just to make sure there's no grease, no dirt, no nothing on there. I mean, it's an old book. I don't know what it's been handled with, so I just want to keep it as it is. Now, the next thing for me is to actually cover this with the tissue. This is wet strength tissue. This is the tissue that I actually made to cover it with. There is a video on this. There will be a link in the description box below. That video was launched at least a week ago now, so it's there. I also said when I was doing this video that I wasn't sure that the papers were 100% finished, and I wasn't at the time whether whether they're finished or not. And I've decided that once they're actually on the cover, I'm going to come in, and I've got some large bumblebees that are actually foam stamps by PM Artist Studio. And I've got some small bumblebees, which are actually a silicone stamp, which I don't know who it is. So I'm going to just put a few of those over this, but I'll do it after the cover is on the book itself. Now, I have to think about what I'm doing here. So let's talk you through the process and the reasons why. This is the front cover. So this piece will go onto the front cover. As you can see, I will place it on there. Once this is glued down, before I do anything else, I will then trim around the edges so that there's enough to fold over and have enough to have the plate on the inside. But if we look at this, if this is the front cover, it covers here and goes over the spine to the back, which is good because I said I wanted a double width. However, if I was then to do the back cover, what would happen is the reverse. So it would come over and this would end up on the front, this join. So I'm going to cover the back cover first and the front cover second. That way the overlap will happen to the back. It's not a big problem. It's just I need to decide which one I like the best of these, which will then become the front. Now there is an orientation. Remember these lines, if you've seen the video, are vertical, and that's where I want them to be. I think I'm going to keep this one as my front cover, so let's move that out of the way. And this will become my back cover. So right, let's get something under here, because I'm going to use Mod Podge, I can't speak today, forgive me. So I'm going to come in. This is my front cover. I'm going to turn it over, so I'm working on the back cover first. There is an orientation up and down, but it doesn't matter whether it starts this way or this way. Right, another thing to say is I need to make sure that when I glue this on, I go here, glue here, and down here. If I was to lay this out and glue this down, even if I was really careful about this here, once it's fully dried and I did that, I could crack my paper. So I'm going to wrap it around. And I'm thinking, just for ease, I might put the book block back into it. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's as tight as it's going to be. So let's just put that under there. Now I'm going to glue down the surfaces and the spine before I deal with the sides. Right. So this is the back. So I'm saying that more for me than for you. So I'm going to get myself a palm brush, which is a Ranger brush. There is a bigger version of this actually, but I don't think I can get it into my Mod Podge thing. This is what I'm using. I usually use matte medium for gluing stuff down. However, because I've got this, and I don't use it very often, I'm going to use it as a glue here. I'm probably going to use matte medium on the outside of the cover once everything's all finished. So this is what I'm using. Oh, you can tell that hasn't been used for a while. Right, now I can give quite a liberal coating. Yeah, that's why I needed this brush. And what I'm doing is, remember, this is wet strength tissue. So it means that it's quite resistant to moisture. It's not like I'm using gift wrap tissue or anything like that. So I want to make sure there's a good coating of glue on here. Now, if you've seen me glue covers before, you'll know that I sometimes use double-sided tape to hold down my stuff. I wouldn't do it in this instance because over time, some double-sided tape dries out. And also I know that over time, if it's on even the slightest bit of a shiny surface, it could peel away. And I don't want that to happen. So just going to spend a bit of time giving this a really good coat. And I'm being really picky to make sure that every one of these edges, all of the corners, all of the edges around the side, we're not dealing with doing the wraparound yet, but it's a good thing to have glue on the edges just in case. It's easier to be a bit pedantic now than later. Right, so that's on there. Now I know this is, I've got plenty of this, so I'm going to give myself probably a good finger's joint width here. The other good thing about Mod Podge is I've got a bit of wiggle room. Right. Looks okay to me. And then I'm just going to use, I've got a catalyst tool here, which is basically just a silicone smoother to help smooth out any wrinkles or crinkles within my covering. Because it's Mod Podge and because it's wet strength tissue, I can lift it up and push it back down again. As I said, there's going to be a wraparound happening, so it's going to be quite secure. But anywhere that looks like it's not quite sticking, now is the time to come in and give it a good burnish down. Right, I know that I'm never going to get all of the wrinkles out of this paper, and it was never my intent to get all of the wrinkles out of the paper. That's inherent with what I'm doing. So I am just making sure this ridge here where the hinges, just making sure I'm pressing down in there. If you've got fingernails, be careful if you're running your fingernail along that ridge, because sometimes you can actually cut your paper. Okay, so I'm just going to fold this under the edge purely just to hold it in place. I'm going to stand my book on end. Now, hopefully, I'm not sure you're going to be able to see everything. Let's see if I can just switch this around a little bit. Sorry, a bit cack-handed here. Just trying to get this to work for you guys so you can see what I'm doing in total. There you go. So now that I've got this on here, sorry, I'm a bit stuck for space, obviously. I'm going to peel this back ever so slightly, and I'm going to come in again with my Mod Podge and give it a really good going over down the spine. Now, this bit here, through time, when my block is moving, through time will have curved through use of the book, so make sure you get that completely as well. Would I have put the book block in if I wasn't filming? I don't know. I mean, it holds it in place, but it also causes other problems. But to be honest with you, for filming, it's easier for me to do it with the book block in. So it means that you guys can get to see everything I'm doing without me trying to battle different angles. So I'm just going to come in over the top, working my thumb across, just pushing this all the way down, making sure I've got a really good contact with that join. Oh, nice bit of glue on there. So just pressing it in. I'm just going to flip my book completely onto its other side now. Making sure I've got a really good, there's that catalyst tool go. Really good. Getting it down in contact with the existing cover. And I've got a little bit of overhang here. So I'm just going to come in and get this fully glued down here. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, oh, it's a bit of a time-consuming way of doing stuff. It is, but you know it's worth it. If you do it properly the first time, you then don't have to do it again. And it's easier to get it better the first time than trying to repair things as you go along. So just making sure that's all present. I have got Mod Podge on the outside of that. That was inevitable. It just happens to be what it is. Now come in and just make sure that again is pressed down. Right. Let's see if I flip this over. So now that it's over here, we can now do the reverse. Now, if I wasn't filming, I would probably allow this to fully dry before I did the other side. But because of the magic of camera, I'm going to try and do it this way on. So again, I'm going to slip this underneath here. Now, I know that this is now going to wrap around here all the way around the side. So I'm going to tear this one edge. And I'm going to tear it so that I don't have so much of an overlap and I don't have a straight line. Oh, and luckily enough, it tears in the right direction, because a wet strength tissue tears in one direction but not the other, and that, luckily enough, just happened to be the right direction. So I'm going to come in again. All the while I'm conscious that things could be sticking, things could be moving. So as I said, I would have let all of this dry before I started to do the other side of the cover, but I'm trying to make sure that we don't end up with a 15 video series here. I think I'm going to be able to do this in 2 videos, I think, guys. And when you consider the third video is the one where I made these tissue papers, I think that's going to be pretty good going. It depends on how long decorating the pages is going to take and sewing in. What I'll do is I will sew in one signature and then I will sew the others in off camera, because I've watched enough videos of people sewing in signatures to know that it can be really, really boring to watch. And I can almost guarantee when you're sewing in a signature on screen, it never goes smoothly. Who am I trying to kid? It never goes smoothly when someone's filming you. Right. So again, making sure I've got a good even coating, and I've come all the way down to this hinge area here again. And knowing that I've got a good finger's width on here, just laying that down, just going by feel, just making sure I've got enough on the go. And this, remember, is the front cover. And one of the reasons I chose this piece of tissue over the other one is it has less natural wrinkles in it. So I do know I'm going to get a smoother front cover. Not that it bothers me. I mean, there are still wrinkles in here. That's totally fine. That's the character of the beast. If I wanted something that's absolutely flawlessly smooth, I'd go out and buy a shop bought one, where actually I like the idea that I'm creating something of my own. So just giving myself a little more time with this. Getting it all smooth, using my hands just to rub it down. Now, I can rub with my hands because, of course, there's no Mod Podge on this side of this cover. It also means that by using my fingers, I can feel whether I've got any air bubbles, which I haven't, thank goodness. Press that down. Now again, I'm just going to tuck this under for no other reason than it's just easier to tuck it under, just so that it anchors everything in place. Let's take that piece of clean matting out of the way. Lift the entire thing up as I did before. Peel this back ever so slightly, or as slightly as it needs to be, and come down the spine again. Now, another reason I'm not going to put Mod Podge on the outside of this cover is some people say that they have a problem with Mod Podge going sticky. So I don't ever have that problem. However, I'm going to respect the fact that someone watching this may be a newbie and does this and then ends up with a sticky outside to their cover. That normally happens depending on maybe your atmosphere or where you live or where your stuff is stored. As I said, I'm quite lucky in that I haven't had that happen. So, right. Again, just making sure I've got this all pressed in to that ridge there, because that's where my hinge is. Okay, let's get rid of that bit. I don't need that. I would say let this dry naturally. However, I'm not going to. I'm going to use a travel hairdryer on it, because that way I can get on with the next stage. So, right, so this is the beginning of our book coming together. Okay, and we're dry. It's probably not dry all the way through, but it's certainly dry enough for me to be working on. I can check that everything's working nicely. Nothing is ripping. I can feel a slight bit of coolness here where we've got a double layer of tissue, but that's fine. Everything's skill. Right, I know where up is still, and I know where the center is now. Can you see? Let's go to this end. I do not mind how much folds over on the ends of here. So if you want to just have a measurement, I'd say that's just past an inch. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could cut it down to an inch, but I'm not overly bothered about that. Now, when it comes to the top and the bottom, however, let's bring this down, I do want to make sure that it's actually not all the way down, because what I want is this here is going to be visible. So I'd like to make that the same width, top and bottom, to fold over. So I'm going to come in. Now, I happen to know this ruler is 1 inch wide. It is 1 inch wide, as I'm not lying to you. Where's the ruler? Yeah, exactly 1 inch wide. So I'm going to come in with a pencil if I can find one. And I'm going to run a pencil line down here, because I can guarantee if I'm going to try and cut this freehand, I will never get it right. And this isn't about me being a perfectionist. This is about just being accurate in what I'm doing, because it'll make things easier in the long run. Now, another reason I've chosen an inch is my first hole is likely to be about here. I'm going to have 3 holes in here to sew stuff in. So I'd rather it went a little bit past that area where I'm going to start stitching through, so that the tissue is trapped within the stitching as well. Now, you could cut this with a knife, absolutely cut it with a knife if that's how you feel. I'm just going to come in and cut it with the scissors. And actually, I don't think you need to see me cutting it with the scissors. I'm just going to get a Tim Holtz scissors, and I'm literally going to cut along here. The edge of this is not going to be seen when it's folded over, because we're going to have a book page in. So bear with me, I'm going to hit pause again, and then I'll get this cut. Now, I am going to use matte Mod Podge for this. I wasn't going to, but I just decided, why not? It doesn't cause any problems if I do. So I'm just going to put one of those under there, one of those under there. Now, don't forget, guys, the methods I'm showing you here are just my preferred methods, okay? There are hundreds of ways to cover a recycled cover. Even if you don't have a spine, you could do this with your boards and then recreate a new spine. There are lots and lots of people who do it lots and lots of different ways. None of them are wrong. They're just different ways, okay? So please don't get hung up and go, well, Ceri never did it that way. You know, Ceri didn't do it that way. So I'm just going to come in and give a reasonably liberal coating of Mod Podge on this corner, ensuring I'm going down into the gap in between. I'm going to fold this in so that it comes in. Because this is wet strength tissue, I know I'm not going to have a problem with it tearing, or should I say I shouldn't have a problem having it tearing. So I'm just going to do that, and as you can see, I'm kind of just encouraging it to come into the side of the cover. I'm not going to do the next stage. I'm going to move on to the next one, because this way it means everything is going to have a really good chance of staying sticky and not moving around while I'm messing with it. Now, in the time it's taken me to do those, the first corner, let's slide this back up again. The first corner is probably almost dry. Another thing I can do at this point, by the way, and I don't know whether I mentioned it, is these two pieces here, I was hoping would be stuck together. They are there. They're not stuck together here. So just put a bit of whatever glue you're using underneath there, just to glue them together. It'll make a slight difference later on. So I'm moving this all over. Hopefully you're not feeling seasick. So I'm now going to start working on getting this all together. And I tend to work on the ends first, then the top, then the bottom. Okay, it's just the way I do it, guys. So I'm going to come in. I like to put a liberal amount of whatever glue I'm using. Now I'm using Mod Podge, as I said, because I've got it. And I've got a pot of it I don't use very often, so which is why I'm using it now. You could use PVA glue for this. You could use bookbinding glue. You can use whichever glue that you feel is best suited to what you're doing. Right, so I've got that on there. I'm going to lift this up and encourage it around the corner. And because I've got wet strength tissue, I can give it a little bit of a stretch. Where's my smoothing tool gone? I'm just going to give it a bit of a press down, and I'm going to make sure I gently press up against the edge there. Again, I'm not looking for perfect, guys. And I know anyone who's been watching this channel enough times knows I say that so often, but I mean it. We're not looking for perfect, but we are looking for something that's a nice clean edge, and that is a nice clean edge. Just slide this along, and we'll do the same on the other end. Now, by all means, if you're finding that, okay, Ceri, I've got this, then jump ahead. Seriously, fast forward. I will have chapters put into this video, so if you feel you're one step ahead of me because you're more experienced than maybe a beginner is, just jump ahead, guys. I'm never insulted by that. I just try to do my tutorials for all levels. Right. Again, giving a bit of smooth down. Now, you don't need one of these. You could just be using a store card. Just be careful, because store cards are harder than a silicone piece. So you can do it. Just be aware that these can be sharper. So that's given me the ends of my books nicely covers, nicely done. I'm now going to turn it, let's turn it, try to find a way for you to see. I can do it this way on, I think. Right. And this is why I don't do bigger projects. But never mind, we'll make this work. Right, can you see? You can see, yay! Now, I'm going to be gluing all the way down into here as well. So make sure you do a little more attention to the piece that's got fabric on it, because what will happen is the Mod Podge will soak into the fabric. So I tend to give that area a quick coat first before I work on everything else. And then I come back in and I give it another coat before I turn the papers up. Just experience, guys. It's just experience. That's the last layer of that, and just give this one more layer. I don't mind if there's too much on the fabric. I'd rather there was too much than too little. Then I tend to start in the middle and just gently offer up the wet strength tissue. So just giving it a bit of a stretch with my thumb. Make sure you're pressing down into this groove here, this channel. I'm going to come in with my whatever smoother I've got on the go. Press that down to be fully in contact. Fully in contact. Oops, come back here, you. Again, along the outside edge. Now, I'm not going to fold the book while this is still wet. It's important you keep this flat until it's dried. Reason for that is if you fold it in, the paper may not fold into the crease, it may buckle out of it. And my cover is almost done. I mean, it's as dry as I can get it with the hairdryer. it's good enough for me to be working on. As I said, if you're doing this, give it several hours to dry. I only finished filming about 15 minutes ago, so it's only had 15 minutes of the hairdryer, but really make sure you get this really pressed down. So that's the important bit there. These will all get held in place by something else. So my next stage now, remember, I still know where my front is to put, remember these papers we took off here? Well, we're going to replace them with other papers because obviously this would make no sense, but I kept them as a reference point. Now I do have two of my own painty papers. You can see these were on music paper. And I want to put these on here. Now, this is one of my favourite pieces of paper, so I'm really excited to be able to use this. And as this has got this theme on, I'm going to put this one on the back as well. Now, I do have to cut them down ever so slightly because, as you can see, they're too large. So what was the height of this? Let's get a ruler on the go. I would say if this was 10 3/4 tall, actually let's do this while I move this to one side and bring in my trimmer. So 10 3/4 tall. I think I'd rather lose a little bit off the bottom than anywhere else. Now I'm trusting that these are squared. Okay, I'm fingers crossed they're squared. So that's 10 3/4 tall. And this bit, again, I think I'd rather lose a little bit from the bottom than the top. So check, 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 and check again. So are these the right height? Yes, I can live with that. I can live with that. Now, this measurement here is the one I'm slightly worried about because this paper, of course, went all the way over that curve. So I'm going to use this as a test dummy. And I'm going to take this down to 8 1/8. Let's just see what that looks like. That's almost perfect, actually. Yes, so we're going to do them 8 1/8 or 2/16. I get really confused with all this. Right, which bits do I want to lose? I think I'd rather use that. So, as I said, all of this is down to praying that these bits of paper are cut squarely in the first place. So that goes on there, there, up to there. Yes, right. 8 1/8. Let's take it off that side. 8 1/8 that way. Yes. So now we've got some decisions to make. Well, you've got some decisions to make. I've already made my decision. The only tricky bits are going to be this edge, because it's going over fabric, and the outer edges, because they're going onto what's pretty much tissue that might have Mod Podge on it. The middle, however, is paper to paper. So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to use glue stick on the middle, and I'm going to use Fabri-Tac around the edges. And I'm going to do a little bit of a test drive with the back one before I do the front one. So again, this is my front cover. I know there's the arrow. I know this is my favorite piece of paper. So if I save that one, I will always know that's my front cover. Just move this over so you can just about see it. Just going to bring in a couple of pieces of magazine page, just in case. I'd rather not have glue over everything. Now, I've got my Fabri-Tac on the side, and I mean literally on its side, so that the Fabri-Tac will be ready to go. I'm going to come in and I'm going to give myself a really generous coating of glue stick. Now, you could put double-sided tape on the inside of this. You put whatever glues you choose to use. If you feel a bit nervous about glue stick, you're not confident in your own glue stick, use Fabri-Tac over the whole thing. You could even put art glitter glue, although I must admit I would struggle with art glitter glue for the simple fact I'm not sure I could get enough of a coating of art glitter glue on here for it still to be wet before I put it down onto the cover to stick. It would have dried already for me. So that's probably why I'm using this. You could use bookbinding glue. That's another one you can use. Again, you could use your PVA glue, whichever you wish. Now, if I do have little bits of the edges not glued down, I would then come in afterwards when they're fully dried and just run a little bit of glue underneath them. The area I'm sort of not really most concerned about, but slightly worried about, is this bit here. So I may just give this a little bit extra on the fabric itself, but I'm not going all the way to this edge, because I know the paper isn't going all the way to that edge. Now, another reason I want to use Fabri-Tac is I've got a bit of wiggle room in that I can slide it around if I need to. So I'll pop that on there. I am completely and utterly and totally eyeballing this, guys. Again, I want to make sure it's not up against this crease, so I'm going to move this over slightly. And I'm going to come in, and whatever you want to use to smooth it down, smooth from the inside to the outside. And what that will do is it will encourage any glue around the edges to come out further. Now, if you happen to be someone who owns a brayer, which is one of these things for gel printing, you can use this to really burnish it down. And what this will do is it will flatten all the glue, squish it to any outside edges, and you'll have full contact. I think that was a pretty good measurement. Now, these corners here are going to get caught by the book corners, so I know those are going to be really secure. I like that. There you go. And I've still got a bit here. Can you see that? Just that edge along there, so that anything that gets caught there isn't going to be pulling this paper away. Right, I'm going to stop the video and get the front cover on, because it's kind of important that there's two covers on here. And then I'll be back. There you go, all nicely done, all nicely in place. Not 100% dry, but then that's fine. For me at the moment, that's okay. I think that's a pretty handsome looking cover. We've got more to do with it, but this gives me what I'm looking for at the moment. My next thing, however, is, there's the inside, by the way, if I haven't shown it to you. I don't think I have, but if I haven't, there you go. Is I want to put on the tissue paper bees, because I also want to then give this a complete covering, not so much the inside, but on the outside I'm going to give it a complete covering of matte gel medium. It can be any gel medium you want. It could even be the Mod Podge that you were already using. I just want to give it a good coat of that to protect it, because I have to put on the bees with this anyway. So where are we? Right, there you go. Now, I have two different size bumblebees. As I said, this is a bumblebee stamp by PM Artist Studio, and it's a foam stamp. I will endeavour to put a link in the description box. And these, as I said, they're a cling stamp. I can't remember whose they were, but I just want to play around with where I want to place these before I actually place them. Now, I could put them like that, but that does sort of give them a wallpaper view. I don't mind this one across there. I just wanted to see whether I like the small ones or the bigger ones. I like the bigger ones for impact, but practicality, will they work? And I think I'd like them, let's see if this is the cover, I would like that by there. I don't mind that going off. I can wrap it around the corner. I could put one on the spine there. I don't particularly fancy mixing the two of them. I want either one or the other. I've only got 4 of the big ones. Unless I put 2 on the front and 2 on the back. I quite like that one just on its own there, to be honest. I can't remember what the bumblebee is supposed to be symbolic of, but I really like the bumblebee. So if I did one on the front, see these are even too big for there. I could put a couple on the back to carry the theme across, but not necessarily as dominant as that one. Actually, that might work. Put the 3 small ones on the back, put the 1 big one on the front. I think I can work with that. Right, I'm going to show you my process for doing this, which I'm sure you've seen before. I use plastic wrap, and I'm going to work one bee at a time. And I've got a bit of paper towel here as well. Right. Oh. This is another product I'm trying to use up, so that's why I'm just trying to use things up that I've got, guys. I'm trying to make sure that everything I've got is current and not going dry or hard in my drawer, because I came across some modelling paste the other day that was pretty much just a brick. I also came across Tim Holtz crackle paste, which I really love. Yeah, it was a brick. So no product is going to last forever. And I think I might just have either forgotten it or I may have been guilty of hoarding it. So I'm just going to come in and just press that down, and that will just mean that I won't injure the bee as I'm burnishing it down. When I say burnishing, rubbing gently is what I actually mean, not burnishing. There you go. And because it's on gift wrap tissue, it is almost invisible because the tissue dissolves into the background. Right. Let's see if I can find a clean bit of this tissue. Plastic wrap, which is there. You never want to use a sticky bit of plastic wrap on tissue paper, because what will happen is the matte medium, or whatever you're gluing it down with, will stick. Right. There. I've got a feeling these might be wet strength tissue. Looking at the way that that's not gone invisible, I've got a feeling that might just be wet strength tissue and I didn't realise. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to end this video now. And when I come back, because I want these to fully dry before I give everything a coat with this matte gel medium, when I come back in the next video, the link to it will be in the description box, and also when you watch the video in the top right hand corner, about now maybe there'll be a link come up there as well. I'll put the next stage of the video in there, and in that one we will be talking or showing you how to get the signatures put in, put the book corners on, and how to partially decorate the pages. I'm hoping to get this whole project done in this video, next video, and the video that was for these papers. So thanks for your patience, guys. I will see you in the next video.